Now, boys and girls, we have Mr. Bilal Zuberi, who is attracted to startups that solve big practical problems with technically ambitious solutions. He wants to back founders who are driven to build large companies and envision a better, more prosperous future than today. And he truly believes that technology can help address some of the world's largest problems, from mobility and connectivity to food production, manufacturing, and more importantly, healthcare. He's a VC partner at Lux Capital, and he's here with us right now talking about investing in matter that matters. I like his topic. Let's hear him out.
Hi guys, thank you all so much for inviting me. You all are doing incredible work, and I'm humbled to be asked to speak to you about things I care about and areas I invest in. Today, I'll talk to you about where I spend all of my time, which is investing in matter that matters. I'll explain to you more as we go along. Let me start by telling you a few things about Lux Capital. I mean, the rest you can learn on the internet anyways. Most of it is public. We invest in early stage technology breakthrough companies. So we've invested in companies like Auris Surgical Robotics that was purchased by Johnson & Johnson last year for $6 billion in surgical robotics. Thrive Biodetect purchased by Exact Sciences this year for $2 billion. Zoox purchased by Amazon this year for $1.3 billion. Desktop Metal public in the next few days at anything from $2.5 to $4 billion. Ava going public at a $2 billion valuations, and many others. But I give you these numbers not to impress you, but to follow up by telling you that you may not have actually heard of any of these companies, right? But they are changing the world. They are saving lives, they're fighting climate change, and in some ways, what we like to say is that these are entrepreneurs who are building the future that they want to live in. But these are not household names anymore, right? Like these are not Facebook, Twitter, and whatever, but they should be. You know, that's what we should be doing. We should be talking about these companies, these kinds of companies that more entrepreneurs are then attracted to and build companies like them. But fortunately, others are, you know, like SpaceX and Tesla and Palantir and Oculus and Nest and Moderna. And these are fast becoming household names. And this is matter that matters. So as a fund, we invest across the country and frankly, around the world in all kinds of disciplines. So if something we see that makes us go, that's interesting, we take that seriously because it kicks off some line of thinking in our mind that leads us to what's next. We manage over $2.5 billion, which frankly only means we just have to return a lot of money to our LPs. So what we are really, truly proud of are the people that we're fortunate to back. I mean, that's the reason why I'm here, not because of me, but because of all the entrepreneurs that I've been able to back that have done amazing things and are doing amazing things. Our Lux family consists of amazing entrepreneurs who are often at the edge of breaking the normal laws of physics to make their dreams come true. They're just at the edge of it. Here are companies who are bringing new drugs to market. The companies sending satellites to space at orders of magnitude less cost than previously possible. Companies using cutting-edge sensors, NLP, ML, AI to prevent terrorist attacks, defending industrial edge networks, and companies building autonomous systems in space, in air, on ground, and on ocean surfaces. I mean, this is the future. So let me talk today about change and about change makers and about rebels who bring about change. I mean, these are the kind of people that we tend to fall in love with. But let's start with the history of our future. I mean, the history of our future is really a history of subterfuge and uprisings. I mean, this is because the future is ushered in not by those protecting the past and resisting change, but by those seeking to uprise. You know, they're seeking to overturn breakthrough. And think about this, these words have very kinetic visuals, sort of volatile and violent disruption of a static object and status quo. But by definition, change is news, and news is change, right? Headlines don't read, yesterday, just as day before, tomorrow will be the same. I mean, that wouldn't be news. I mean, military actions are change, elections are change, market moves are change, currency moves are change, inventions are change. I mean, change is all the time happening. In fact, the more the change, the more the surprise, which really ought not to be, because if there's only one thing we know from history, it is that the only thing constant is change, which is flux. I mean, internally at Lux, we jokingly call it flux, the function of Lux, F of Lux. I mean, the notion that change is the only constant is deeply embedded in the Lux spirit. But here is something that we all may have noticed. I mean, these days, the rate of change itself seems to have quickened as well. It seems our tools are making more tools now, and it's happening faster and faster. I mean, ask an anthropologist, what is it that makes humans the more dominant species? And my guess would be that they will say, because we are tool makers. Well, but that's not enough. It's not enough because there's nothing really special about being a species with tools. I mean, birds build nests, beavers build dams, MIT beavers, chimps use sticks to dig for food, etc. But for most of humanity, man made the same tools that our ancestors made. We just got slightly better. So what changed? I think what changed was that we figured out science. We figured out how to discover new things and explain how they worked, why they worked, and what could we do with them. And today, if you look around, almost all new things that we enjoy come from science-based inventions. We just don't call it that very much. I mean, look around to witness this amazement. I mean, everything around us was invented by somebody or some small group of people. This computer that I'm using, this video camera that I'm using, these chips that I'm using, the ovens, cars, planes, lights, glassware, everything. But celebrating how inventive our entire species is sort of misses the mark, because it isn't that mankind is great. It is the few rebels and mavericks of mankind who are always pushing the herd. I mean, they're the ones that expand the spotlight to what is known and are curious and sort of courageous to take the next step. And yet the majority of the people, majority of time, are against change. And nearly every one of the inventors we've ever backed at some point was laughed, ridiculed, rejected, ostracized, ignored. I mean, there were easy ways to make money, but they chose to invest their time and effort, and then later on our money, into matter that matters. But these are the people that we celebrate for their breakthrough ideas and for their perseverance and for their persistence. So what we say we like change as human beings, but we actually lie, because most of us actually don't like change. I mean, we form habits. We like predictability. We dislike surprises. I mean, we hate shocks. Much of our day and our personal habits are actually fairly routine. And in addition, most people might be individualistic, but in masses, people are conforming. We dislike dissenters. We fear failing. We fear standing out, and then we like the safety of the herd and the warmth of the majority. So it's not a surprise that the contrarians, these entrepreneurs, inventors, and entrepreneurs are always the minority, right? So let's go back in history a little bit, right? We know the stories of the persecution of Copernicus and Galileo and Kepler, and we shake our heads with disbelief. How could that be? But the reality is that honestly, if we had been around then, we may have found ourselves on the very wrong side of history ourselves, attacking the very people we now admire. Let's talk about a few modern examples, right? Not going back, 1,000 years. So when Hermann von Helmholtz, I talk about that a lot. Helmholtz was a physiology professor in the 1800s. And then when he proposed the theory of the conservation of energy, that energy isn't created or destroyed, physicists wouldn't pay any attention because they said, what does he know about physics? And similarly, in 1800s in Vienna, Semmelweis was a physician who had a big idea that challenged a 2,000-year-old medical dogma. And he was utterly ridiculed and resisted. His license was taken away. He was ostracized, discredited. And his crime, his crime was to identify that it's the doctors that are more likely to lead to child deaths because they don't wash their hands after working with cadavers. Now, he was right and saved tons of lives. But then there's this famous example, I was just reading about it a few days ago, of these two brothers with no scientific training, no schooling beyond high school, who opened a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio, and were ridiculed at their attempt at flight when serious engineers all over the country had tried before and failed. Now, of course, now it's history that their outsider view that treating flying like it's balancing on a bicycle is what helped the Wright brothers to be the first to fly. Now, there's another one, Maria Sklodowska, born to a Polish family. She was a fighter resistor, but then she was good at math and science, but in Russia-ruled Poland, women were forbidden to go to university and not able to become scientists. But anyway, she got eventually at the age of 24 to go to Paris and work with a scientist named Pierre Curie. Well, guess what? She became Marie Curie. And she published, but was completely ignored. The French Academy of Sciences, rejected her application for membership. Harvard refused to give her an honorary degree, and they said she didn't deserve this because her husband had helped her. But guess what? In time, she proved herself. She was the first scientist to win not one, but two Nobel Prizes. Similarly, Judah Folkman is a well-known scientist who basically said tumors grow their own blood vessels. And that was a crazy idea. I mean, people rejected it. People walked out of his lectures. Researchers were told, don't join his board or don't join his lab. And the Boston Children's Hospital, which is a part of Harvard, thought he was a reputation risk to the university. But today, nearly half of the medicine used prescribed for cancer patients are based on the idea of starving tumors of blood supply. So inventors, engineers, scientists, these crazy mavericks are motivated by curiosity, competition, and vanity. But that isn't all the virtue. I mean, it's not enough to just invent or discover something, but they want to savor it and then talk about it. They're eager to shout about it from the mountaintops and to win praises and accolades. But they want to create riches and they want to have recognition. The rebels and punks don't give up on their dreams along the way, though. I mean, they don't stop thinking differently. These mavericks, more than technology or patents, these people are really the very thing that we invest in. Our technical and scientific inventors and entrepreneurs don't often have to worry about people stealing their ideas. They're not scared about talking about their ideas. In fact, their fear is that they have to jam their ideas down other people's throats because people won't believe them. Again, people will tell them there are easier things today. There are more immediate problems to solve, but these are the people who see a future and want to build it. I mean, whether it's building autonomous cars, brain tissue, imaging systems, or 3D printers that save material and change global economies, or human trials are conducted in cancer. They believe in a world that's different than one exists today, and then they go out and make that happen. I mean, as someone who's privileged to hang around such folk, I can safely say that they don't take any successes for granted. I mean, they know that there are a million ways to fail, but they also know that they just have to find one way to make it work. I mean, children are natural born scientists, right? I mean, I have two kids, and they're curious about everything. I mean, we've got a lot of kids in Lux family who are always asking the why questions incessantly. Why? And we hope that they never stop, because most children's curiosity wanes by teenage years, unfortunately, because they become interested in learning only about a few things. And in fact, by adulthood, curiosity wanes even more as people know what they need to know, and that's all they want to know. I mean, they spend all their time in trivial things like sports and entertainment news and gossip and dysfunctional celebrity lives. I mean, in some ways, I'm reminded of what Oscar Wilde once said, an insatiable curiosity to know everything except what is worth knowing. So at this point, you might be wondering how Lux finds interesting ideas. I mean, how do we have a crystal ball? I mean, we don't. The reality is that, I have 0% confidence in what's the next big idea that we will find. But I have 100% confidence that it will be found at the outer edges of where we already are and spending time. We keep our eyes and ears open, and that's how we find things. I mean, they link to one another, right? So we invested in a new class of materials called metamaterials with Bill Gates to create satellite antennas. That led us to understanding that there's a revolution happening in microsatellites, which led us to investing in a company called Planet Labs. Planet Labs was collecting tons of imagery that led us to understanding machine learning AI will be used to analyze that imagery. So we invested in Orbital Insight. And then Orbital Insight's work allowed us to realize what GPUs are being used in these systems. So we invested in Nirvana, which got acquired by Intel. And Nirvana's use in centralized computing made us question what is happening about AI inference at the edge, which led us to investing in Mythic, which is now a high valuation company. And all of these companies, by the way, are like close to $1 billion valuation each. But the reality is that curiosity leads to identifying interesting problems, which leads to finding interesting people who are persistent to trying to solve that problem. And then this leads to our investments. So our entrepreneurs and our scientific inventors question everything. I mean, that's just who they are. And they ask what might be, and they ask why. I mean, why do cars need drivers? Why is our input into a computer system limited by the speed at which we type? I mean, why are surgeons not guided by machines as they make decision making? I mean, why can't we prevent mass shootings? Why are we limited to mechanical designs that revolve around Cartesian coordinates? Why can't we look at cells, millions of them statistically, to do drug discovery? I mean, what is the connection between the gut and the brain? How do we manufacture in space? I mean, think of other things. What if young blood was given to old people to treat aging? Why are tattoos still applied the same way it's been done for thousands of years? I mean, why can't we speak to our pets? Why can't our pets speak to us, and so on and so forth? So the idea is there's no shortage of problems. The shortage is that of curiosity and then having the perseverance to go after them. So, I'll finish up with this. Most of us will never come up with a big, important, contrarian, world-changing ideas. I mean, that's just not who we are. But we all have a role to play. All of us who are watching this as a consumer of other people's ideas. New ideas are actually abundant. When we encounter one, we have a big choice to make. Do we embrace it or do we reject it? Too often, the conservative, those who are resistant to change, and they're too set in their ways, will say, that will never work. It won't work in Pakistan. We can't fund it. You will never get success because US is working on this, or Canada is working on it, or Australia is working on it, or China is working on it. But our job is to find those who seek to ask, why not? And then answer, what if it does? Thank you.